I'll talk to it. I've got several pages of notes here, and I'll try to summarize the basic idea. So I was talking with Kent on Friday about plasma and how plasma operates. And I realized that there was a basic conservation property that we were ignoring when we were talking both about the verification of transitions and when we were talking about things with shards. And that conservation property is that effectively you've got a kind of linear proof in the form of each COM rule, and you only ever have to check that the COM rule is well typed in order to verify its correctness, at least with respect to the resources that are used as tokens in your staking network. So it turns out that you can use linear logic to reason about the resources, and essentially all you're asking is that you have certain typing relations between an existing deployment in a shard and what it transitions to, and the COM rule that's being applied to get to that transition. So that's the basic idea. And then,
just to make sure we're following along, is the invariant that you're talking about the number of coins?
It's a little bit more subtle than that. It's not just the number of coins. So as a first approximation, you can think of each shard as having a tensor of widths. So in linear logic, there are two conjunctions. One is the tensor, which counts resources, and widths are sort of like, there's kind of like sums. They're kind of like menus, so it's a bunch of different options. So if you think of a deployment of a contract which might convert one position into another position as a sort of a rough approximation, then width will describe for each contract the menu of resources that might show up as a result of the reduction of that contract. And then you have a tensor of a bunch of those. And then the simplest one is that you've got a wallet contract which has some tokens in it, without any sort of menu options. And so that would then be a tensor of different kinds of tokens together with some positions over a range of tokens. So that's sort of a rough approximation. I'm just giving you intuitions. The math is actually pretty clean here. And so so now what you can do is you can write down some typing rules that have to do with you pull a particular you think of the tuple space as divided into a T, which is the rest of the tuple space together with some contract. So this is very R-chain specific. I should have said that up front. You can do it you can do the same kind of analysis for other systems, but it's just a lot easier for R-chain to think about it this way. So you divide your tuple space into the rest of the tuple space and some contract, and that's going to have a typing along the lines of what I talked about. And then you have the new tuple space and the new state of the contract, and that's going to have another typing along of what I talked about. And then you have a typing of the COM rule that's a linear implication from the first tensor of widths to the second tensor of widths. And that's all you have to check, because you want a conservation property, which is that linear proof, right? So that's exactly what the linear logic is good at, is capturing that kind of linear that kind of linear use of resources. So you can write all that down, and if you do the arithmetic, just the natural arithmetic, you get all kinds of exceptionally nice properties. Like you get the correspondence of the COM rule to entailment, as well as to linear implication, which is precisely what you want. And then the next step in all of this is now you have to show how to do the linear typing for some fragment of row lang, let's say the row calculus, that you could then lift through the rest of the language. And there are basically 4 approaches. One is you translate the row calculus into Wadler's calculus that he sort of devises to do session types. So that gives you a pi calculus variant where the terms are witnesses to linear formulae. So that's actually fairly straightforward. The other thing is you can embed, you use Abramsky's proof expressions, and you can embed row terms in proof expressions. And I give a sketch of how that's done. I'm not going to do that here for bandwidth reasons, and I don't want to take up too much time. The other one is you embed namespace logic in linear logic. So you give a trend. So we know how to take row terms and type them with respect to namespace logic. And now all you have to do is to show how the namespace logic is encoded in linear logic. And that would then give you another typing judgment from row terms to linear logic. And the final one is to give a direct typing from row terms to linear logic. But the other ways of doing this give you a way of sort of sanity checking your type judgments. So basically, you want a row term to type in terms of a linear term, a linear formula, if and only if your row encoding, say either into Wadler's calculus or into proof expressions, types according to your translation of the type that you started with into linear logic. So if you started with a namespace term, then the namespace formula, then it would do that. So that's the basic idea. But the interesting thing is that this not only gives you a way to check your transitions without having to run them. You're just doing a type check. And we have to argue or look carefully to whether or not that's cheaper than running the com. But it also gives you run exactly the same shape for comms that go from shard to shard. Again, what you're checking is a linear property, and now effectively all you're doing is you're recognizing that from shard to shard, you're aggregating a couple of tuple spaces in a couple of comma contracts, and then you're looking at a comm event that bridges the gap between them. So now again, what you're to validate or check that particular comm rule is a type calculation. It's not it's not running the actual comm event. It's just a type check. And so there's lots and lots of discussion about being able to memoize these type checks and sign type checks. So if you get digital signatures on certain type checks, then you don't have to go very far back in terms of a computation history or anything like that. But that's the basic line of thinking that I've been doing. That it all falls from the conservation property that Plasma is maintaining in what they do. It's just a different way of thinking about how to do that.
Great.
Yeah.
A quick question. So for cross-shard comm events, does the check of that just rely on like the comm event that's going cross shards and not on the comm events that happened previously in the sending shard that led up to that, or receiving shard, for example?
Well, the point is they just fit together. So the history and the validity of the history is done only in terms of a sequence of type checks, not in terms of running the actual computation.
Do you think it might be easier to check a type check for 1,000 comm events than one? Like for one event, I'm not sure how you're going to get much gains, but for 1,000,
but for 1,000 you get a lot of gains. That's the idea. Yes.
That's the dream and the hope, basically.
Yeah, exactly. But the nice thing is that the math is just trivial. It's just arithmetic. There's nothing.
Well, it's linear is the idea. But can you really check all the things that you want to check about your row calc term with linear types?
But no, but that's the whole point. You don't want to check everything. You're only interested in checking. So the use of resources is the only property that people care about.
Okay, so but when I asked about whether it was just about conservation of coins, you were like, no. I guess there's other reasons.
Right.
You care also.
So it's not just conservation. It's not just conservation of coins. It's more subtle than that, right? It's conservations of positions in coins.
You mean I'm still going to have my coins if no one else spends them kind of claims?
Well, think of a contract as like potentially converting between positions of coins, right? So it's like a menu.
I have coins and you have coins?
Or I either have this many euros, or I have this many dollars, or I have this many yen.
Okay,
right?
at like known exchange rates.
Yeah, exactly. And so then you can write down these sort of positions, and then a shard is or a tuple space is really just a big tensor of those positions.
Okay. Have you written down or do you have any resources for us to look at this type checking?
Yeah. That I have pages and pages of this calculation. So I'm in the process of typing it up. I mean, literally, it's just like I sort of stumbled on, Kent introduced me to plasma. I started thinking about the conservation properties that we were missing in our current setup. And so then I started writing down what the conservation properties would be. And by the way, that was exactly the same idea with the geometric idea. The whole idea of continuity is really a form of conservation property, and I just wasn't thinking clearly about it. But when you think of it as a conservation property, it's like, there's the correlation between the typing and the conservation property is a lot like Nether's theorem. That's kind of the same idea that's going on here. Anyway, so I thought about it on Friday. I just have pages and pages of calculations. I'll try to get it typed up so people can read it.
Sounds exciting. What about non-forgeable names?
Yes, so that's the same thing. I'm so glad you said that, because that's the other kind of resource. So you want to be linear in your use of coins and unforgeable names.
And hopefully this is going to be easy to check. But even if it's easier to check, you still have the almost exactly the same validation problem as before, only now it takes less overhead to do the checking that you had to do. And so like the system is more scalable, but it's not like it doesn't really change the like architecture. It changes the parameters.
I guess
it changes like maybe if it changes the architecture, changes like some of it, namely like for the validation part.
Right. So what that means is that you some of the trust properties between shards that we were going to have to assume in order to get the lattice like structure can potentially be calculated in this way. You don't have to, it's like you straightforwardly calculate the type checks as a way of verifying, instead of having a bunch of watchers that are all watching.
Okay, but with that exception, the architecture, it doesn't change the architecture.
That's the idea.
Yeah. But there's still gonna be a watcher. They're just gonna have to check. They're just doing less work now.
Well, no, it's just that anytime you get a contract coming into or a comm event coming into a shard, it's just any of the validators that are coming in can just go off and say, well, I'm going to check the history up to the last known good check.
But wouldn't the watchers normally do that?
Right, but now yes, but you don't now have to have like the whole chain doing all the watching. It's like anybody who wants to verify can go and verify.
It sounds like you just knocked down the overhead of watching. It doesn't sound like you've changed the rule at all, except for maybe now you're assuming that it's not required because it's so easy.
That's the idea. I'm trying to lower the bar so you don't have to have a bunch of watchers. You just run the calculation.
I mean, you know, I mean, I kind of imagine that the best case is that like, oh, everyone is a watcher, and then, but like as opposed, but like where still you have watching, but like you still, but now you need to have a special class of watchers.
Right. Yeah.
But
Okay.
like,
That's sure. Yes.
the idea of checking into the last, you know, verification that's reached some threshold, uh, you know, still very much exists, right?
Right. Yes, that's correct. Anyway, so that's my update.
Cool. So from my end, just was mostly on the debugging side. I guess is very R-chain specific, and worked on the proof of stake contract. But I guess also that's a bit R-chain specific. So basically nothing really on the research
Well,
side.
when you say you worked on the contract, you mean you worked on like writing things up that like, you know, are generic and would be part of any mechanism? Or you mean right now like a specific incentive mechanism or bonding unbonding policy?
Oh, not even the policy. I was ensuring that the blocks we're keeping a cache of the validator bonds in the block, so that when we're running the validation checks, we don't have to like go fetch from the tuple space the contents or the bonds essentially in Rolang form, or in the, I guess, LMDB stored form.
Cool.
Yeah.
So you have like a place where the deposits go and it's exposed in the blocks.
Yeah, the deposits are cached in a slot in the blocks, which is a bit easier to work with when we're doing validations. We might remove it later on, but
is it going to be like actually in the block, or just like there's like a new hash that points to the validators weights?
well, it is truly in the block as of now.
Got it.
Yeah, that's it for me.
I guess at the end of the day, you're going to want like a hash and a hash of a diff. Or maybe like a hash of the state and a diff.
Oh yeah, we of course have a
validator
hash
set.
of the state, and then we have a diff of all the transactions. And
yeah, but I just mean like also that for the validator set, if you're going to keep it separate.
One more time, please.
If you're going to set, if you want quicker access to the validator set and quicker authentication of the validator set, for example, for light clients, you'll want a hash of the validator set and a hash of the diff of the validator set also.
Oh, I see. In the header or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Cool, thanks.
Cool. Thanks for the update. So I guess Nate and I have some updates. We're at the Ithaca Ethereum Foundation in Ithaca at the Ethereum Foundation IC3 bootcamp, where we're working with a bunch of people on sharding in CBC this week. So we're covering a lot of topics that are pretty relevant, I think, to you know, both Casper research in the abstract and some of the stuff that we're dealing with now, like with your lattice consensus protocol, and basically we've explored and we've done kind of interesting research in a number of directions. Although most of the time it's still been just doing education. Notably, we've looked at changing protocol states to use not just be sets of messages that necessarily include all the dependencies, but to not necessarily include the dependencies. And we've looked at having messages have hashes in their justification, as opposed to have in the justification just all of the messages that they've seen. So we have new definition of protocol states and state transitions that involve these messages with hashes and that don't necessarily include all their dependencies. That like is potentially going to be more. It's going to give us some flexibility to think about sharding and to think about the efficiency in terms of the number of messages that you have to have. Hey, Greg, do you know that your video is on? I'm not sure if it's intentional. Another kind of some other work we've been doing, looking at sharded block structures, and cross-shard communication atomicity definitions. Specifically, we have like a block structure where every shard has a blockchain and has an outgoing and incoming message queue for every other shard. And messages have a format of some like message load, data, a block that they're expecting to be executed after, and the number of blocks within which they're meant to be executed. So that like when a shard tries to send a transaction to another shard, it can fail, and it'll know in a bounded amount of time, in time is in measured in block heights, whether that transaction won't be received. And this is kind of appropriate, especially in a setting where like one shard is following another, but not vice versa. And so you can't really expect that when there is a send, there's immediately going to be a receive. So it kind of like gives the shard some number of blocks to include it before reverting the send. And so we have like all sorts of atomicity definitions, like one where if the send is there, then there's a receive on the other side in the fork choice. Another where if the send is finalized and the receive is finalized. Another where it's impossible to finalize a send and to finalize that a receive won't happen. So this just kind of doesn't allow the breaking of the atomicity, where a send happens and a receive doesn't, or vice versa. And so we have these different atomicity definitions in this block structure, and we're working and the kind of new protocol state structure, and we're going to working towards like defining fork choice rules, and our goal is to have a bunch of different sharding protocols which satisfy different definitions, and to try to see what's the different efficiency kind of level, like see if we have like more efficiency in some than others. I feel like I've missed something, but do you have any ideas, Nate?
Yeah. If we want to talk about the sharding things, there's another kind of side unrelated update about the work we've been doing on the paper, but does anyone have any thoughts or questions, comments about the atomicity definition stuff or sharding stuff?
So this seems to give you a framework for being able to talk about a relatively wide range of synchrony assumptions.
Not really. So actually, on an somewhat unrelated topic, we did make some progress on synchrony assumptions in Leibniz research. But on a more related topic, we have more time thinking about validation and making sure that like you can rely on a message even though you don't have its justification, and therefore don't really know that it's actually a message, because it could be pointing to some hash that isn't a message hash, which would be allowed, right? And so the validation thing is another area we kind of looked at. The synchrony and Leibniz thing. I mean, it's not exactly related because all of these definitions so far have been entirely asynchronous.
No, but you're building in. If you build in these bounds on block heights, then you're starting to be able to get. Your atomicity assumptions can relate to synchrony assumptions.
Yeah. Okay. So, but then we're talking about like an asynchronously safe consensus protocol replicating a synchronous state machine, for example, maybe.
Right.
And that's like a kind of different layer, right? But you're totally right. Well, when I said that it's all asynchronous, what I mean is like in the definition of the protocol, so notion of time. But definitely there is this notion of like synchronization across shard via these and receives.
Yeah, that was the point. So now you can build a fairly broad range of synchrony assumptions.
That's interesting. For the sharded system itself, as opposed to for the consensus protocol.
Correct. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. So the other update that's probably we're talking about is we've been also working on the paper. So this is a paper we presented, I think, a couple times at this point. But the first section where we kind of get through the protocol, state definitions, and the safety proof is like kind of fairly finished. And most of the work has kind of been focused on the safety oracle. So we have a specification of the clique oracle, and we're essentially attempting to prove that it satisfies our safety definition. The proof as of now is like fairly long and hard, kind of laborious, but we've been simplifying and improving, and it's been kind of interesting. So our definition of clique oracle that we had actually turns out to not be enough. So we've had to like kind of tweak the clique oracle, and not totally convinced that it's completely there yet, but we're getting closer and closer to something that actually does satisfy our safety definition. So that's probably the main work that's happening on the paper. It has to do with the safety oracle proof. And it's coming along very well and getting simpler, and which is nice. So
yeah, hopefully we'll be done soon.
Yeah, that's the goal. It's a dream.
Nate, do you care to explain what changed? Because
yeah. So we have this like notion of like this clique that like they all see each other disagreeing, and they all don't later see each other disagreeing. That's kind of all we had at a certain point. That's like all we had kind of in the definition of what a clique was. But it turns out, and I can send you a specific example later, because I don't remember it off the top of my head. But pretty much with that, we were able to construct a scenario where a validator in the clique could leave the clique based on what they see about which validators are equivocating. And so it pretty much has to do with these edge cases where like one of the validators in the clique doesn't see anyone equivocating, but there actually are a lot of people equivocating in the current protocol state. And so, maybe they can be convinced by these currently equivocating people easier. And so, it's like an extra clause where the validators in the clique essentially have to see something about the clique compared to equivocations. That essentially protects us from these equivocating validators coming back and convincing validators in the clique about something that isn't true because they're already equivocating or whatever.
Yeah, so the kind of difficulty came up with the fact that validators could already be equivocations in our state, and the validators could have not already seen them, and so the clique might not. A clique the clique size required is much lower when there's a lot of equivocations. But that might not actually be a majority in the views of the validators because they haven't seen the equivocations.
I see. So, basically, if there are no equivocations, then the previous, 4 checks would be enough. But because you can't see, you can potentially not have seen some equivocations yet. You'll need some other checks. And so, but we don't know what exactly we need to check for yet.
Well, we have something that we haven't completely broken yet.
Okay, so Vlad's not convinced, but I'm pretty sure it's not so okay. Yeah, it's not completely broken. That's actually a fair claim. We have a restatement of the clique definition. that is like definitely closer to like correctness, but I think that I don't know if it's like strong enough for us to be able to prove what we want to prove in some way. And so, but it's very much not far off, I think, from what we want to prove. It's like missing a term somewhere. It's my feeling. Yeah, and the last thing to notice is that it is a pretty easy check. It's like, it's not so hard. It's not like, actually building a graph and doing all this crazy stuff. You can just pretty much eliminate validators up front. Based on stuff. So, yeah.
That's good to hear. Cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Thank you.
That's definitely good to hear. Or I'll be looking forward to more updates there.
Yeah. We haven't heard from Nash and Michael Birch. I'm sure there's going to be some discussion about validator economics if you guys are up for it.
Yeah, I'm down.
Okay, but Michael, did you have any updates?
Nope, nothing in particular. I spent last week doing some, RChain specific debugging and pull requests and things. Nothing interesting from a Casper perspective, really.
Okay. So Nash and Mike and Meta and Michael and I had a conversation, I think it was on Friday, which is the Validator Economics call. By the way, if anyone from here wants to join the Validator Economics call, it happens on Friday. It's been happening on Friday at noon Pacific time. We can probably want to move that because we also want Georgios to be in on the call because we really have to get this nailed down soon.
Okay, cool. Yeah, sure.
Yes. So the conversation was, at least the one we had was around the issue of so there's this proposal to have all the stakes be equal in a particular shard, and I've been worried about this for a while, and I haven't been able to articulate what the worry was, and I was finally able to articulate, I think, to Kent on Friday before the validator economics discussion, this idea that I'm worried that there's an upfront coordination cost to stand up a shard that sort of it doesn't line up with the way the network dynamics are going to play out. Like with the Bitcoin network, you sort of had people being, following their own self-interest, and then eventually coordination emerged. Whereas here, Joe Blogs wants to start up a new shard, but if it's just Joe, then no one's going to come to the shard because it's not secure. So Joe now has to get a bunch of buddies, and there's no competition for hopping into the shard, right? They're all basically just rowing together. And so that acts as a decelerating effect on the network. So I wanted some kind of gamification of hopping into the shard sooner. So we kind of looked at
maybe even for shard creation, eh?
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a lot of motivation for shard creation, but it's really easy. It's almost free of cost to create a shard, but just to make one is not sufficient. You need to make one with enough agents staking it in order for it to kind of get any traffic.
Or for it to not be like a liability for the rest of the network if they have to be managing it, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So
all of this is like part of a cost of a shard, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, but what I wanted was some kind of gold rush idea for if a shard gets created and it looks like there's some promise there that people want to get in sooner rather than later. And so if you look at Nash's fee structure idea, it has that property, right? Even though what it ends up doing is kind of creating an optimal shard size, which I'm not necessarily opposed to, if you can make the creation of shards very, very easy. Like if the cost of the creation of shard is not a problem, then having a parameter which boils down to a shard size is not so bad, because you can always just make another shard that has a bigger or smaller parameter depending on what you want.
Sorry, are we talking about number of nodes or total deposits? What is the size here? Size of state, number of like bandwidth requirements, or I'm not sure what the size is.
Well, it arises in terms of
You still there? You went suddenly silent.
He's had connection issues most of the morning. This is the first time that he's been dropping. I think, did he drop out completely?
Is he equivocating?
We can't tell yet. Might be. We go. Anyone can always be equivocating, because there could always be to, it doesn't really make it a lie exactly. It's just an equivocation.
So
I guess we'll just assume that Greg isn't. Oh, Greg, are you here?
I'm back. Yeah, sorry, network problems. So maybe Nash, you want to revisit the fee structure just to make sure that everybody's on the same page.
Sorry, wait. Did you say it? Tell us what you meant by shard size.
Well, yeah, it's calculated from the fee structure. So I wanted, either Nash or Michael Birch to describe the basic fee structure.
The idea that I think that Greg's referring to is that when you go to join a shards validator set, you both have to bond your stake, but then you also have to pay a fee that's roughly the same as the stake to the existing validators, and so they collect that fee when you join, and you then are incented to stick around long enough to collect similar fees from other validators as they join behind you. And the idea is that this
like a Ponzi scheme. It's like
sorry.
Every shard is like a Ponzi scheme where you want more validators come around until and if not more validators come around, you're gonna be stuck out to losing your fee to your previous validators, except for the first validator who doesn't have to pay a fee.
I'm not. It's not a Ponzi scheme. It's just a fee, right? So if you've got 10 validators in the shard, you want to join, you take this, you bond your stake, then you take the same amount and you pay it across those 10 validators, and then you can validate and you could collect transaction fees and do the normal stuff. Now you're in the validator set, so when other people join, they'll be paying you fees. And there's a return on investment calculation you can run that tells you roughly how long you have to wait around before you recover your initial fee from people coming behind you.
But this is like assuming that a rate of people coming behind you, or
but the reason there would be is because the fees go to the bonded wallet, right? So you can't collect them until you leave. So there's an incentive for people to leave and come back.
That's weird. Okay, so you have an incentive to leave to get your fees, and you have to, and then you. I mean, are you sure that this zero-sum game is adding any value? It sounds like you're just adding a zero-sum game to the bonding game where they're redistributing fees between each other.
Yeah, it prevents the Ant-Army attack, right? Like you have to make. You can't just bring. You can't just double the size of validator set for free, right? You have to pay something to do that, and the payment
To the other validators, though, so like they could do it for free. It's just that you can't from the outside.
No.
Oh, some of the fees.
What?
You're paying to the other validators, right? The other validators globally, or the other validators on the shard?
On the shard.
Okay, so then if, like, imagine that I have control of all the validators on the shard, then it's like totally free for me to add people in.
If you have control of all the validators on a shard, you can break the protocol any way you want. So sure, then you can make it free to do whatever.
No. Just because if you have all the validators on a shard, you shouldn't be able to make invalid blocks. You should still be pretty constrained from that point of view.
You can just control all the validators on the shard. You can do anything you want.
You can do what? Sorry, Mike?
If you own everything, you can make them do whatever you want.
But there's going to be full nodes that aren't validators on shards, right?
No, you have to be bonded to have any effect on the system at all.
Well, no, I mean you like all the full nodes like have a huge effect on the system by only relaying valid information.
The only ones that care are the ones that are the validators.
No, all nodes care.
No, I mean, if they're not participating in the protocol as bonded validators, there's no incentive for the bonded validators to send the messages in the first place unless they're doing it for some out of protocol reason.
But well, I mean, yeah, and like for example, maybe they're users, or for example, maybe they are have an interface to users. These are
sure,
like
but
care about
But if you own everything, you can give whatever information you want to users.
If users validate blocks, then
if users validate blocks, then they have paid and they are bonding. They're bonded and they're validating as part of the network.
All full nodes validate. Not all full nodes are bonded. I mean,
if they aren't bonded, then they have no risks and they can cry wolf and cause havoc. You have to be bonded.
Oh no, they're not. They don't get to produce any protocol messages, and so there's no havoc they can cause. I mean, I don't know what you're talking about.
So I think what's being said here is Vlad is saying that you've got.
Well, we get, but Vlad, if you can't produce any protocol messages, right, then it doesn't matter whether you're validating or not because nobody can tell, and there isn't any way for anybody to complain about bad validators anyway. So it's irrelevant.
Well, I mean, it is relevant because like when you connect to the P2P network, whether you get valid messages or not is extremely relevant. And these validating full nodes that aren't producing messages make sure that people on the peer-to-peer network only get valid messages.
I don't think that there's anything that the peer-to-peer network can do to stop the validators from approving whatever state they want. So if you control all the validators on a shard, you essentially can control the shard. You can do whatever you want there.
So Vlad is saying that there's this layer between the peer-to-peer network and the users who are validating the stuff going on in the network. So the users perhaps trust this layer between them and the network to make sure that things are running correctly. That
had better not be the case because the peer-to-peer network's not proven to be secure for any properties, right? So,
well, I mean, except for if you run a node, like you can tell that like you're validating the blocks. So like it's very secure, actually. Like the most, like there's like a reason why there's a really strong culture in Bitcoin and Ethereum, for example, that like you should run full nodes. To check that the blocks are valid because we don't trust the miners to produce valid blocks because the miners are, the kind of profit-seeking actors in the system on the supply side as opposed to on the demand side. The demand side needs to check whether the service they're being provided is actually legitimate.
Did Vlad drop?
Sorry, I accidentally muted myself. I'm not sure when. At what point?
Like just for 10 seconds.
Fuck. I was just saying that the demand side of the market needs to check that the goods are being provided, and it's not sufficient for the supply side to check. Both sides need to check that consensus is being formed on valid state. It's not enough just for the validators to check. The validators are just the sell side. The sell side has an incentive to, collude and screw the buy side, as like in any market. And so you need clients to check the validity of blocks. And this is why like the full node protocol verifies blocks, because users run nodes or use services that run nodes, which kind of keep the miners in check. Like if it wasn't for the fact that like Infura, Etherscan, all of these services run nodes, miners could produce invalid blocks, and we could have this problem that you're suggesting. But I feel like we're getting somewhat derailed here, and we only have 10 minutes. And I feel like we should talk about maybe incentives as opposed to this more broad question of who's checking the validity of the blocks. Although I guess it's kind of relevant because there's two things that you guys have that like that like normally I wouldn't do for fear of the validators colluding. One of them is like the redistribution of fees to validators. Because like, the validators, I mean, it might not even be costly to pay fees to validators because the validator paying the fee could be the validator receiving the fee. And the fact that they can self-elect what shard they go to also seems like they can just coordinate to control the shard. So even if they can't produce invalid blocks, they can still, if you have all the validators on the shard, you can still do some things. You can cause barriers to entry to the shard.
Glad you just dropped out again.
The validators still have lots of power, and it's super important that we don't let the validators connect.
Or dropped out for about 10 seconds there.
I was saying the validators have power to do things like censor and revert blocks and cause and extort people for fees. And so it's important that we don't let them kind of collude, and that we actually facilitate competition between validators. Did you catch that? Was that?
I understand your incentive. Your point of view. I'm not sure how to enforce it or what your suggestion was.
Well, concretely, like minimizing barriers to entry improves competition and will increase the level of participation of validators, and not allowing validators to select what shards they go to will like stop majority takeovers of shards, which could lead to things like
not allowing validators to choose what shard they belongs to breaks performance, and that is paramount.
Well, I wouldn't go that far. I know
you wouldn't, but we would. So there it is.
Well, the natural concern there is that like you get a cartel of validators who have effective control of a shard or like a namespace, and they get to start charge extortionate rents and do maybe like
for another shard. There's no barrier to entry for creating new shards.
There's a cost to everyone for lots of shards existing.
Yeah, but there's overhead. There's costs to shards existing.
What costs?
other people need to check whether the communications to and from those shards are valid?
The only communication between shards is as a client. The child shard is a client of the parent shard, like any other client.
So just one thing, I think the shard that Vlad is talking about is very different from, I guess, like the side chain like shards that we've been talking in our chain. So just maybe that's, I just want to point out that that's
well, I mean,
different.
as long as I'm assuming that you can move something back and forth between the shards, and that there's some validity condition required, right?
No validity conditions, other
So,
than it's
like,
valid R chain. I mean, it's valid Relay.
I mean, there, like, you can totally, like, so if there's no validity conditions, you can steal money from side chains.
No.
No, we do. You can move things back and forth, and we do have validity conditions. There's this notion of a child shard, and you can only move rev out of the child.
That's part of the contract. Yeah. It's not part of the protocol.
Right. Yeah. But in some sense, it is part of the protocol because the whole point,
it's the contract that establishes what it means to be a child shard. So sure, I guess you could view it that way.
Yeah, the chains are independent apart from there's a contract that connects a parent to a child.
And where is that contract? And how
the contract runs in the parent.
Right.
So it's in the interest of the validators and the children to become validators in the parent,
or to just verify the transitions. But how does the child say move money from that contract to some other location in the parent?
So say Alice has money in the child shard, goes to the mint there, says, move my money up into the parent. The validators are watching that address. They then, as each one independently becomes satisfied that Alice's transaction is safe, they send one share of a K of N signature to the parent contract, which then moves money out of the depository into a wallet for.
Okay, so the validators working together in some core threshold size, I'm not sure which. You said all of them, but I can't believe it's really all of them. Maybe all of them minus a couple. Can totally just steal money from anyone in the shard then.
You are always susceptible to the validators running the shard, forming a coalition.
I mean, no, yes, but they usually don't get to make invalid blocks, usually they don't get to, steal money in this way. I guess technically, like, they're doing something that's completely valid on the parent and invalid on the child. Or
no, it's completely valid in the parent because the parent validators are validating all of the transactions.
Yeah. But if the validators take money without having a corresponding send in their mint on their side.
This is why Mike was emphasizing the idea that the children are massively incentivized to validate in the parent shard. Right?
Yeah, sure. But the point is that, like, the validators of the child shard can take the money, and it's totally valid on the parent shard.
But if you have that many colluding validators anyway, they can break the protocol.
No. There's only bounded, like, set of failure modes that they can cause, and, like, we know how to deal with each of them, and, like, none of them are this bad.
If they're colluding, they can ignore bad messages from other validators.
They can
absolutely. They can do whatever they want.
No, they don't. They can't make invalid blocks if other people are watching.
If other people are watching but aren't able to make protocol messages, then the only things the other people can do is say, "Hey, they're being bad. Move off this shard."
No, we're more like just ignoring the invalid messages.
Yes, so like there's a reason we don't think about 51% attacks traditionally as being able to generate infinite sums of money. Right? Like very notably, when this
I can't hear whoever's
Yeah, we
talking.
can't hear him. Come
Can you hear me
closer.
now? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Cool. So there's a reason we don't think about 51% attacks being able to generate infinite sums of money, right? A 51% attack is an example of a place where there is a cartel of validators controlling something, controlling mainly the main chain, but notably they still are constrained to not be able to produce any invalid blocks, right? They can spend and they can censor, but they absolutely cannot create money out of thin air.
Sure, they can.
No, they can't.
It's called a hard fork.
Oh, but that's not that. Hard fork can't be instituted by a set of miners. All the users.
The other miners in the thing will ignore them, but they have forked and created their own money.
But no, also until the exchange updates their software to the new one that accepts
Infura and Etherscan and
exchanges are outside the scope of this thing.
No, they check the validity of the blocks, and if they don't hard fork, also they're not going to see that new chain.
If you change a validity condition, aka you break a validity condition,
right? But at the top level of
there's no way to get back. Like once the set of validators has been validly rotated to a set that has a 51% cabal, there's no way to recover the original chain. You can't go back and re-elect a new set of validators. You have to start again. Right? So the validators can hard fork, and if the exchanges don't go with it, like there's nothing to track. There's just no transactions anymore. You have to start a new chain.
So normally like when you hard fork, there's like a chain that's left behind, and as long as that chain has validator rotation, like it can introduce a new validator set. And notably also, even though if there's a majority of validators censoring, they can prevent new validators.
Gotta go. Have developers stand up. Bye.
Yeah.
Bye. Yeah, I guess Greg, you have to go also.
Yeah, I gotta go.
Okay, well, I'm happy to linger to keep chatting, but I guess bye everyone who has to go.
All right, ciao.
Mike, Nash, are you staying?
I can stay for a couple minutes.
Great. I was just saying that
the problem is, as far as there, if you've got a minority of the validators, you can't. How do you approve validator rotation blocks?
Validator rotation doesn't happen like in Casper the Friendly Ghost. Validator rotation doesn't require a finality.
That seems unlikely.
Well, you should take a look at it, Nash. It's
you should send me the links.
Okay.
Publish them.
Done, and your team is, I think, is totally aware of the spec and is about to implement it if they haven't already. I talked to Kent about it just last week, actually, I think, about implementing validator rotation. Anyway, so validator rotation can happen actually without a majority. It's just not going to be asynchronously safe or final. So one of the two. It's either it's not going to be final or it's not going to be asynchronously safely final. But it's not like validator rotation can definitely happen with a hard fork in the worst case.
Email me the your paper or whatever you've got that shows this. I'll read it. I'm curious. I mean, if that's
it doesn't really show it as much as like claim it. Maybe he claims it in a way that makes it pretty obvious. I don't know. Maybe Kent or Michael can chime in.
Yeah, I think it's. I mean, it's. I would say like it doesn't really make sense to say like agree with the fact that the validator rotation has happened before that block gets finalized, but it definitely is implemented that way, that you can have this protocol state in which your parent block is not finalized and your current block has rotated out some validators, and you just have to keep going. And I don't know.
I mean, I think going makes a lot of sense, because if you wait for finality before you rotate the validators, then you like introduce more overhead than necessary.
Oh yeah, I agree. And I think the idea is like you're truly expecting that block to be finalized soon, in some sense.
Just like every block that's ever produced, Kent.
Yeah, well, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
But so basically, like, I mean, I would, encourage you actually to assume that at least one shard will totally get captured. At least one, and probably within the first couple of years of our chain's launch. And you should think about like how to make sure that that isn't a problem, for example, for exchanges or for anyone who might be the victim of the attacker.
Well, so in the sidechain shard model that we've been discussing, like the loss is capped to however much is input into that sidechain. Essentially, the idea is like
that doesn't sound like it's not a lot of money necessarily.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, like the sidechain is the sidechain, I guess.
There's going to be like a super high performance shard with like 4 validators, and then like everyone's going to put their money on there to like use the faster exchange.
Yeah, I mean, you shouldn't put all your money on there, right? Like that's the.
I hear you, but people love foot guns in cryptocurrency.
Yeah, so there's I see your point. Let me think about what you said. I want to go look up and maybe pick Kent's brain about the differences between what you're doing and what we're doing with shards. I mean, I think I gotta run at this point.
Okay, got it.
But I'll talk. We'll definitely talk next week.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Hopefully by next week we'll have more docs also.
Cool. See you guys.
See you.
Bye, Dash. Kent, Mike, want to talk about anything?
So I guess one thing I just wanted to clarify.
I'm jump over to developer stand-up, but catch me up on whatever you guys talked about.
Yeah, just Michael, can you cover for me? Like you I think you know what I did. So
yeah, we'll do. All right.
Cool. Thanks.
See you, Vlad.
Bye, Michael.
So just quickly,
hey. I'm just saying hi.
Oh yeah, hi. So on Nash's point earlier, when he was trying to say like, oh, we're preventing the army of ants attack with that Ponzi scheme. Like I think I understand what he's trying to do there. Like essentially, the idea is like you want to protect the first comers from being.
Well, yeah, but that's barriers. That's just creating barriers to entry to create rents for the first comers. I mean, that's Peter Thiel would approve, but like blockchain space, we're trying to like reduce the number of middlemen.
I guess it's the idea is like he wants to create the side chain for, let's say, a specific DApp, and so like he wants to make sure that like a specific DApp can essentially be controlled by the original owner at least all the time, and then
it's like that's not really what we want, Kat. That's like we want to release app developers of the obligation of having to run their fucking servers.
Yeah, that would be nice. I agree. I guess the model of who's running what is kind of different I mean, I don't know. Do you think we'll get enough validators who are just willing to run anyone's? I guess the whole point of like having performance-based shards sort of implies that you're doing it because you want to improve the performance of some specific thing.
Yeah, but don't you think that you could like strike a middle ground between this like performance is everything and like fuck security thing? Like Greg mentioned this, right? Like idea. Imagine if validators somehow signed up in like a class. Like I'm a super high performance validator and I'm a super low performance validator, and then we instead of totally allowing them to choose which shards they go on, you choose between high, low, and middle. And then, we sort them based on that. And, I hear you in that it's not as good as literally getting everyone in one data center in Iowa and then institutionalizing them as a validator set. But here's a question. Here's a genuine question, right? If we allow validators to choose which shard they're going on, and we institutionalize them in that it costs a large sum of money for anyone else to join and kick them out, right? Then for users who are using that application, what guarantees are they getting? Especially when we're in a system where we allow validators to generate invalid blocks and steal money, right? What guarantees are users getting? And like the answer is like not that much. They're really not getting that much at all, right? Because it's like some people who set up this application pretty much have control over their funds totally and utterly and completely. And that sucks.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
And not only is it just like,
wait, sorry, I couldn't hear that.
It's not like they're like trusted name people necessarily. It's like people who are self-elected and put up there kind of as part of the Archain blockchain. So it's like people who benefit from the Archain brand, but like otherwise are unknown.
That is true.
We don't really know. Like we don't know who these validators are going to be, right?
Yeah, that's for sure. And I think
so. There's definitely some of them are going to be scammers.
Yeah,
and fine because like as long as you like don't build the scams into your system, or like I'm just kind of trolling, but what I'm saying is like
no, I totally see that. Like I think the idea of a side chain, it inherently pulls the network apart, right? Like you're sort of now building your own thing, and you're sort of taking out from the main network in a sense. So I think I don't know.
But if it was really a side chain, I would agree with you. But it sounds like it's like institutionalized in the protocol, like the creation of these things. I guess to some extent, it's going to be a matter of user experience, whether or not it seems like they're just using our chain, or if it seems like they're using someone's private server.
Yeah, that's for sure. And
you can actually make it legitimately our chain, like in the sense of like the security of that system could be as like basically the security of our chain if you had the right kind of controls around the validator set and the validity. But you obviously given up the validator set thing, but at least you could still have validity.
I see. I don't know. I in some sense, I don't think or at least, we haven't written any code that makes some the sidechain thing a specific in protocol thing, right? I mean, there are plans to add the K of N validator transactions, which would make it a bit like that. Although I'm hoping to replace that with the SPV proofs or like client proofs, whatever, and that would truly make it what?
Sorry to interrupt. Real quick question. Sorry. Do the side chains have mints?
Yeah, the side chains have mints. I mean, are the
mints in the main chain? Are the mints in the parent chain?
So, let me make it clear. There's a parent-child relationship per token, right? So you can if there's only like one main mint per token, right? And then
Cool.
like, and
so
then
is the main rock or rev or whatever the hell token?
Yeah, rev.
The main top shard thing.
Yeah, and so no other shard can generate new art chain tokens, if that makes sense. Like you can only like.
Cool.
Let's just go on to single chain. Like a single friendly ghost chain, the inclusive ghost and validator rotation, and like and economics that makes sense for that single chain. And then all of this data center stuff, sidechain stuff, can come post launch.
If it's not in protocol, then that's like pretty easy.
Yeah, then it's just like the normal L2 garbage that we see everywhere. Sorry, I just
No. I think
I don't love L2.
Yeah. No. I think that's exactly what's happening though. Like, and so in some sense, that's kind of why I'm okay with this, because I think whoever wants to build their side chains are going to go ahead and build it. And so as I said before, like the only thing that makes it not like a true layer 2 solution is that we have this K of N validator transaction. So like, but like I'm sure everyone would be for replacing it if we could get down like client proofs. Which
what is it? Is that a multi-party transaction?
Well, so the idea is like the validators are responsible for now sending messages to the parent. Like I think I don't know if maybe I'm familiar with like the Bitcoin sidechain paper, like the original one, and like the way they do it is like it's not the validators that are responsible, but like the users are responsible for sending transactions to the parent chain that contain proofs that they're like, for example, token burn, or like the fact that they locked up their tokens are buried in under enough blocks, and like the users are also responsible for sending rejection proofs, right? That's saying like, oh no, there's been a new fork that doesn't involve that lockup transaction. And so does that make sense? Like, but instead of that, we're because we can't do like client proofs as of now, we have to do this thing where validators are now watching the child chain, for example, when they're sending to the parent. And then, yeah.
What do you mean we can't do like client proofs? We totally could do. We totally can do like client proofs, and they're just clique oracles.
Well, you have to send almost the entire DAG as of now, right? And or like you have to.
You send the clique
and corresponding proofs though. You have to prove they agree with some candidate block, which is like an estimate chain, which is potentially the size of the DAG.
No, but it's way better than Bitcoin SPV.
Yeah, but it's not maybe better than FFG SPV.
Maybe not.
Wait, so you're saying that even though you might have to send over the entire DAG, it's okay?
Maybe fine. Yeah, you send a block header DAG, and you send like you don't send the entire DAG. You send just like the tips of it, like just the stuff that's required to check.
Oh, and you just assume that the contents of the block are valid?
Yeah, at least at the bottom where they all agree.
Oh yeah, I see. Wait a minute.
You're talking about full nodes ensuring validity, but like clients are light and they're not checking validity everywhere, and so somehow we can give them assurances about validity in other ways, but it's not through them checking every single thing.
Oh, interesting. I did not think of it that way. Yeah, okay. Then yeah, we can just have, so we just need validators to now be able to check from the Rolang level. Like we have to implement the clique oracle in Rolang. And
if you want to do a sidechain, you have to implement the clique oracle in Rolang. I started trying to do it in Solidity.
Mhm. Sorry, can you speak up a bit? I can't hear.
Sorry, I started trying to do it in Solidity, so I have some efficiency thoughts and stuff that we should talk about sometime if you're like going to go down this path.
Yeah, for sure.
But anyways, yeah.
I see. So I mean, but you say like you think it's feasible, like.
Yeah, I don't think it's impossible to implement the clique oracle in Solidity, pretty much because the distinction here is that we don't actually have to do the search for the clique, right? Like, you can think about it like you just have to get the blocks that form the clique. Actually looking for it is done by someone else already, right? As a light client, you're not going to be doing like a exponential search over like all subcliques of validators. Instead, you just like ask someone for a clique, and maybe they have it, maybe they don't. But pretty much what we say is that like for a transaction to be relayed to the parent, that you have to have done this clique in the block of the transaction character.
I see. Yeah, that makes sense. Ooh. And do you think what do you think is the timeline on this?
So if the question is about the timeline on the research versus, so like the timeline on what?
Well, so my feeling, what? Or these the Solidity clique oracle implementation
with the interactive prover verifier challenger.
Yep.
Interactive game, but like in that case, it's kind of gross and like makes maybe more assumptions and like just kind of like
the interactive game is nice though.
It's super okay. So we actually have a super efficient interactive game that pretty much involves submitting the block headers themselves. You just have to submit the block headers for the clique, and then anyone can like prove that the block header doesn't agree with the candidate block, and then pretty much like it's like legit, and it's like the overhead is like just the block headers and no actual checking. But like maybe it's worse. But we should talk about it as well, and like the trade off here. In terms of when the Solidity thing's gonna exist, I have a feeling it's probably gonna be some time, like months.
Yeah, I would say that it's
low priority.
Not a lot. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I was gonna say. Well, I was gonna say it's not.
Yeah, and so I mean, my feeling is that like Ovidiu, I don't know if you met him, but he's working on like the KVN stuff and whatnot. But like, I feel like it'll be inevitable that we'll need to hard fork to eliminate. Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry. We're talking about these magnet balls that we're looking at. Sorry.
Oh. So yeah, I was like, so I feel like we're unfortunately going to have this kind of layer 2 creak into the protocol for Mercury, and then we'll have to hard fork it off for this more elegant light client proofs. And then
why don't you just okay, well I guess I don't know. I guess I don't really know. I guess I don't really know what your requirements are for your side chain. You might be able to hack something together that's simpler than so is the validator signature just like a multi-signature?
Oh, the KVN? No, it's just literally validators. Well, so I actually think that this interactive proof is just as complicated. It's just that Ovidiu is the one who's working on it, so it's like whatever he thinks of is probably what's going to go through. I don't know. I guess I can try to explain this interactive proof thing.
But so why don't you just use a multi-sig?
So I guess it's like a oh yeah. Sorry. It is kind of a multi-sig, yeah. That's true.
So multi-sig will be lighter, will be the lightest thing, and it'll just be like super trusted. But it sounds like you guys are happy to trust them for the validity of state transitions anyways. So
yeah. So I mean it's a side chain, right? Like I don't quite understand.
Without any SPP proof, it's just like a multi-sig.
Oh, I see. So yeah, it's just a multi-sig on the main chain that happens to be correlated to some side chain that's running elsewhere. Yeah.
You implement a multi-sig.
Yeah, okay. So let's put it this way. It's not, if the main chain won't have this kind of layer 2 logic sort of creaked in, but all the side chains will have this layer of logic that isn't quite pure.
Well, I think I misunderstood then.
Oh, no. I think you got it. Like, so the main chain is literally just like pure Casper. I don't know how to put it, but
that's what I was hoping. Yeah, that's what I'm kind of.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so that's great actually. I guess the way I was thinking is like we're probably only going to launch one implementation, and so I guess it would be like I was assuming that it would be the sidechain implementation that we would be launching, but I guess it's pretty simple to have two, if that makes sense. Like one for all the side chains that people want to launch, and then one for the main chain that doesn't have this extra validator logic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like that. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But and then all the validators just need to know how to use the multi-sig on the parachain.
Yeah, which is, I think that's just Roland contracts, right? Like it's not anything special. Mm-hmm.
Oh, Ken.
Mm-hmm.
Just don't write any bugs in that code, man. It's like nothing special, but you better not fucking write any bugs, man. It's not special. But it's like super high critical vulnerability, like like super high risk of like any bugs being critical.
Oh yeah, I agree. I mean, it's about as critical as the rest of Roland itself.
Yeah, maybe in the sense that like the Roland is bad, maybe then all bets are off. But it's like specifically like it's just like a big money theft opportunity.
Oh yeah, because people will potentially be piling a lot of money into these multi-sig contracts.
Or like you send a validator a request to like sign this output in this multi-sig contract, and it'll be like okay, and then you do that for like 5 of them, and then people can just steal the money by just asking the validators.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
There's all sorts of like that's basically what I'm concerned about. Is like a kind of attack where you can just.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I guess there is a lot to be careful here, I would say.
Yeah, I would say so too.
Yeah.
And I'm still hoping that the launch will be delayed.
Oh yeah. So.
Oh yeah, I mean, is there any chance that it'll be on time, Nate?
Well, so I think I do want to clarify or make it clear to I guess people who are going to be using this that we won't be having behavioral types in Mercury. So I think it's almost we should say like people shouldn't be using this network for anything critical from the beginning, because I feel like even if we get everything down perfectly, like we're missing the features that sort of would make us comfortable about using this network.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I don't know.
When does the testnet launch slated?
So I guess it's scheduled for September, and I'm sure we're just going to launch what we have, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I mean, all the features we discussed last time, plus I guess whatever we get done.
Well, you're gonna need validator rotation.
Yes, which hasn't been implemented. I mean, yeah, I guess this is, but that's what we've been sort of.
Hopefully, right? At very least starting the 4-choice rule from your last finalized block.
Oh yeah, that's for sure. That's for sure.
As opposed to starting from the Genesis block every time.
Yep.
Ideally, an efficient one.
Yeah. So, I don't know if I'll have to think about all the validity conditions I've written, and I feel like there's this dangerous potential that like the efficient fork choice rule doesn't work well with some of them. Like for example, justification regressions. I don't know if I might have to change the algorithm or.
The efficient fork choice rule is just for calculating the fork choice rule efficiently. It's not for any of that stuff. It's just for checking the validity of the message, like the estimator.
Oh yes. Sorry. I was assuming we were talking about something else about potentially excluding some justifications from the block for particular validators if they
the whole like the non-redundancy. Yeah. So checking non-redundancy is totally a pain. You're right.
Yeah. So that one will be harder. Yeah. I haven't. Sorry. I guess the efficient fork choice rule that sounds doable. It hasn't been included into our September timeframe, but
yeah. But the validator rotation, I guess, totally is, right?
Yes, except I don't quite have a spec.
What do you mean? You just put the validator weights in the block, dude.
Oh yeah, we already have that. Yeah. Oh yeah, we can totally rotate validators. Sorry, I thought you were talking about the incentives.
Oh no, I wasn't talking about the bonding and unbonding.
Yeah, like for example, the auction or the lottery or whatever. We haven't decided. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But yeah, I think I don't know. That's kind of where we are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I'm excited for you guys to launch, but I'm also concerned that you're gonna screw something up and someone's gonna lose a lot of money. That's very normal. Totally, the way the cryptocurrency is right now. So I guess I should just accept.
Yeah, I mean, what is?
Well, that was awesome.
I guess. Yeah, maybe we should have a larger discussion. Like I feel like we need to talk with Greg sometime.
Yeah, I feel like our chain should hire me as a consultant to look at the to advise on some of these issues.
Yeah. I mean, aren't you on the board?
I'm on the board. That doesn't mean I'm doing consulting.
I see. So you can't hire yourself? Is that how it works, or?
Oh, I'm not an active board member, unfortunately. Me too.
I see. I guess I'm not quite sure how the hiring dynamics go there, but
I was half joking, anyways. I don't.
Okay.
Think about it.
Fair. But I mean, I do hope that you can come on and at least have this sort of vote on when things are allowed to launch, if that makes sense. But I mean
that would be nice. I would love that. I would love to have a launch veto power. That'd be awesome. But I'm not holding out much hope.
Well, I mean, I guess
do you think Greg's like, is he willing to like think about it?
Sorry, I can't hear.
Sorry. Do you think Greg is like willing to think about
a delay?
A delay.
Yeah, I'm sure he's willing to think about it. I mean, I in some sense, it may be inevitable if we don't have an agreement on this incentives thing. And like, I mean, like if you know, Michael Burchin or I have not written the code for it, it's like, well, I mean, what are you going to launch? So I don't know.
It's hilarious.
Yeah, I mean, it's not. Yeah, I guess. I mean, I'm hoping we can. I don't know. I guess I underestimated the difficulty of this issue. So, anyways, one more time.
The economics.
Yeah.
Well, you're not obviously not alone.
Yeah, I realized that. So.
Yeah. You know, I think the whole. I think Greg also. You know, I think he's been underestimating the difficulty of economics stuff. No. Yo, Christian, you still here?
Yeah, man.
Are you both of these accounts?
Yes, I'm both of these accounts.
All right, well,
Should I stop recording now? Would it be a good time or?
yeah. Now it's a good time. Yeah.
Hold up. Give me a second. All right.
All right. So we're now speaking privately just to check.
1 second.